to Radio Free Will. This is a podcast for sovereign people. I'm your host, George McCullough, and we're coming again to you from Griggstown, New Jersey. I want to apologize for last week. We missed an episode because my wife was getting a little annoyed and she wanted to have a day off with me, which is nice. And but we missed an episode. So we're going to pick up where we left off. Once again with us today is Michelle Mockers, artist, activist, and philosopher. Michelle, how are you doing today?
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
I got to apologize again to folks. I was outside in the garden and I'm a little sweaty. It's hot and muggy here in New Jersey this week. And for folks watching on Vimeo or YouTube, we're trying out lights in the studio here. And it's a little blinding, but hopefully the picture will be a little bit better. So, Michelle, what's the news of the week? How are you feeling?
I feel very well. I have no problem at all. I'm publishing some of those, I print those magazines to send in September, because not in August. August is not a good month, People are still on vacation. You are not preoccupied by any political or whatever it is problem in August. So I'll wait until September to really start to talk about what we are doing.
And what are we doing?
My dear, it's a big thing. If you consider the dialectic of the arts is the very, very first time since a man put his hand on a cave, the very, very first time that a positive philosophy is expressed. Capitalism, whatever you want, they call it capitalism, whatever. Capitalism is not a philosophy. It's basically you make it as much as you can. That's the basic result of that. Communism, we know communism, and we cannot accept communism because it's based on a wrong idea. Which is that a very, very simple. Marx would say that the world is full of contradictions. Everything is contradictory in the world. And the world progresses when you solve those contradictions. And you solve those contradictions by eliminating one of the terms. The proletariat will eliminate the bourgeoisie to become the classless society. Now, the classless society, Marx forgot to say what it would become. And he was not able to say what it would become. So in other words, the permanent contradiction, suppressing all the terms of contradiction goes absolutely nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. And the communism is to make men not thinking. They say that it is not your sentiments and all that to govern you, it's the way you are living. So if you improve the way of living, you improve everything else, which is completely, of course, wrong, because you still have a conscience made of a lot of things, and they negate the conscience.
Well, I gotta say, I've known you, Michelle, for a long time, and that's the first explanation that actually sinks home to me. It makes perfect sense now.
I am pleased of it, George.
But capitalism is not a philosophy. Why not?
No, capitalism is not a philosophy. It's so less a philosophy that even in the American way of capitalism, you have two completely opposed things. The state capitalism, laws, liberty inside of our society is governed by laws. You can do this, you can do that, in the street you cannot do this, you cannot do that. So laws to forbid you to do this or to do that. On the contrary, in business, it's free enterprise. Of course, there are some laws now to regulate free enterprise, but free enterprise means only one thing. You kill the competition to take the place of the competition. So in one way, you forget absolutely to kill, and the other way, you give the permission to kill. So that is basically a contradictory philosophy.
But wouldn't that be like a philosophy along the lines of Darwin, survival of the fittest?
The fittest survive. That's what what it means. In fact, the fittest survive. You are stronger than the others, and you survive. And your company, your business is stronger than the company. The same thing of the neighbor. And you kill the neighbor to survive, to sell more, to make more money, and so and so. So that's it. That's it. Basically, it's all about money, my dear. It's if you really analyze the whole thing, money is the God. You know, you in God we trust, okay, but you serve at the same time two masters, God and money.
So, the goal of a business in a capitalist society is to become a monopoly.
Yeah,
It's always the goal.
of course.
And what happens to everybody else?
Well, they do what they can. That's it. So you eventually have some help of the government under this or this or this form, but basically, no, basically, and it's what the philosophy of our philosophy is that you have some people. Let's say that this philosophy is like a frame. It's based on the art, so it's a painting in a frame. Now, in capitalism, you have people who paint above the frame and people who paint under the frame. Those have too much, those don't have enough. So this is a society, if you want, more balance. And it is, what is the result today in America? You know very well, the 1% who basically owns their own thing.
And once the 1% owns everything, then it's the 0.5% going after the other. It's like a cancer.
Yeah, and you know, you don't see the 1%, but you don't know to which extent they are not, they don't, you know, all the TV and all that, all the ideas that they put in your head, you know. I was discussing this week with a man who said that the Republicans, for example, are against abortion.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they against abortion? In fact, or the others are for abortion. In fact, it's a political party who take the place of a spiritual party, and they use a spirituality as a material matter to say, hey, if you have conception, you're not paid. So, which is a way, which is in my opinion, a completely devious way to use that type of spirituality to push in one sense or another one. For me,
So it's like not having separation of church and state.
yeah, exactly. The church becomes the state of those who at that time are in power. So that is absolutely not the goal of the state to be a church. The goal, the government doesn't have to be a church, not at all. It just has to keep the people as good as possible, but not to tell them what they must think, you know. And when you do that, when you say, I am pro this or I am pro that, is basically to push people in that direction or that direction. And that is not legal. Abortion, for example, abortion is not the problem of men in a party. It's the problem of a woman who is going to give birth. And it is her problem to know if she gives birth or not the government. The government has only one duty in that condition, which would be to provide whatever the decision, to provide the medical necessary for the position. That's it. That's all what a decent government should do. No decent government should do. You do not do this, you do not do that. Spiritually speaking. I don't say materially speaking, you don't drive on the left side or the right side. That's something else. But spiritually speaking, the government is not a church. And it's a mistake to transform it into a church.
Do you think if men could give birth, Republicans would be against abortion?
The Republicans? Yeah, they would be against.
No, you think so?
Yeah.
If men could have babies,
Yeah, they would be against, come on, against abortion.
somebody would be.
They would be against abortion. The others would be pro-abortion. So in other words, when you do that, you are telling a person, hey, if you do this, I pay you, I will support you, blah, blah. If you do that, you can go jump in the lake or whatever it is to solve your problem. That's not right. The government has the only duty to have all good people in the population. And good people need absolutely the same medical attention, one way or another one. That's not the problem of the government.
Yeah, it's been my observation that Republicans say they're against abortion,
Yeah.
but I don't think they actually are, because when they're in power, they don't really do anything about it.
And that's something else. That's something else.
They just use that issue to get into power.
Yeah, of course, but it is issuing issues that should not be used precisely to go to power. A political party doesn't have to go into, once more, doesn't have to go into spirituality and things like that to have voices for it, you know. That's completely wrong. For me, it's completely wrong.
Did we ever have a society where the church was running the government?
More or less in the Middle Ages, yes.
The,
More or less in the Middle Ages.
England,
Especially in the Middle Ages.
Poland.
Especially in the Middle Ages, you had
The Catholic Church was...
the Catholic Church, Islam, all that. You know, Islam had a fantastic army. Huh? They were not converting the people in the beginning. They were not converting the people with words, but with swords. Don't forget that. And they had an enormous army. So you know that's to mix up everything, and to mix up even when you look at some kings. Especially especially in the Middle Ages, who more or less introduce all the way of thinking of the churches, the Catholic Church, or in England, for example, that was the Reformation, and they created their own church. So the Queen was directly involved in that. And for me, that's not. For me, today, it's not legal. It's not legal. It's not. I should say, right to do that. You don't have to interfere in terms of spirituality to obtain voices of people.
And did like the King and Queen of England just replace the Pope?
Yeah, the king said, "The Pope is me."
Oh, really?
And after that, the queens, you know, Elizabeth and all that, they were the big names, and promoting, you know, the fight between the Catholic and the Protestant in England, you know, with Mary Stuart and, you know, all that. But finally, it's the Reformation who won in England. They were not for the Catholic Church.
So this brings up a question I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing as good and evil? I stumped Michelle, folks. For those on TV.
George, but then you precisely go into something spiritual. It's your belief to believe that there is a God and there is a devil. It's not to the state to tell you that there is a God and there is an evil.
But Anna believes that you have to have, it's a duality in the universe. You have to have good, and you have to have evil, and you have to have good. You have to have light. You have to have dark.
You cannot. If you give freedom, you cannot avoid that some will go to the right, some will go to the left. You cannot avoid that, my dear. And it would not be, in some ways, intelligent, in fact, to have all the people going just like that. In fact, if you believe it, man was created with the freedom to do well or not to do well or bad or good. So that's it. And it's man who, if you look at the whole history of man, it's man really who chooses to be on peace or to be on war. And you know, the problem is that the problem is not that simple because all the people who take power, they take power and started to impose their own view with their power upon the others. And we are going to make the conquest of this of that because this of that and the conquest of that. So we were, if you look at the history of man, more at war than anything else.
So it's not good enough just to take everybody's money. Then they also want to tell them where to go, tell them how to live.
Exactly.
But your philosophy does not do that.
No. Man must have the choice. You must choose, and that there is no way to do otherwise, my dear. You do well or you don't do well. You do well or you do bad. You are a nice guy or you kill your neighbor. You know, that's man, and that's your privilege to be able to do it. So if you look at the whole history of humanity has been more at war than anything else. And you always had people, so all the generation, starving people. Always. You had starving people. And you have people who were very, very rich, having everything they wanted, and the others were really starving. That has been at all generation. And it still can go on, my dear. Because what is the future? Nobody talks about the future. That what is wonderful is that no one of the very big political people of today is speaking about the future. What is the future? And what will we do in the future? Nobody talks about it. Have you heard some of the American statesmen say that we are going to have artificial intelligence, robots, we are going to take over? Nobody talks about it.
Well, there is the one guy who running for the Democratic nominee.
Well, yeah, but what can he do?
Andrew Yang, and he mentions robots and
he mentioned, but hey, that's it. That's it. He can do, and even if he mention right, he can do nothing. The one of the wonderful things of the political parties in this country is that they absorb absolutely everything, all they want. If you look at the political life of all the parties, like a Party of the People, for example, who lasted 10 years, then make more or less a contract with the Democrats, and will absolutely absorb, they disappear in the system. You disappear in the system. They are very good at make you disappearing.
Yeah, that's my critique of capitalism, that it's so hard to defeat because I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Blob, or if anybody listening or watched. I use the analogy of the blob for capitalism because it's so good at absorbing every single thing. You think you're a rebel, you're punk rock or anything like that. Next thing you know, capitalism has absorbed it and it becomes part of the system. And it seems to do that with everything.
So it's why, so the question comes after that. If you want to make something politically speaking, how do you do it? If you start to do it by yourself, but are obliged more or less to go Republican or Democrats, or if you want vote, you're doomed. You're doomed. You can do what you want, you will disappear. All of them, even those, what's his name, who was 17%, who had 17%, Perot.
Ross Perot.
Ross Perot. He disappeared. He disappeared. You can have 17% of the vote if you have the money to have that. But you disappear. He made absolutely nothing. Nobody made anything but the political party themselves.
So let's get, while we have the time, let's get to our last episode. We stopped at the general rule of the last general rule that we spoke about in your philosophy, which people can get at your website, which is no-pennies.com. It's an entertaining document, and folks should go there and read it. The last episode we spoke about elections with no private funding, but now we're going to move on to Rule 4, because you only have 8 rules for
Yeah,
a
to
happy
simplify,
society.
yes, it's a little more. No, I give the essential. I don't want people reading that to be lost in all the consideration. I give the essential things that will be, if you want, the goal of this party. Essential. Then after that we go into details. That's
Are
something
people
else.
able to add to these
Oh yes,
rules? And you would be open to it.
yeah.
All right, folks, you heard that? Send your general rule to, how can they send it to you? Your email address is
Michel Mokers, one word.
Michelle.
Michel Mokers at Gmail.
Okay. Um, so the fourth rule is complete education for all.
Yes. If you don't
Complete
have
and free? Is
complete and free.
it? Okay, you're starting to sound like
Because
Bernie
otherwise,
Sanders.
if it's
then.
not free, you never have the complete. Because the people who could be bright, they don't have the money. to
And
be
why
bright.
is education so important?
Education is important? Number one, what do we understand with education?
Yeah, what is education?
That's the problem. And I solve the problem in a different way. I don't say it here. You have the education of the mind, means that you have to know basically, intelligently, you have to, to learn the world. You have, I'd say education is in three parts. The book, exposition to all the arts, theater, symphonic orchestra, everything you want. And the third is to be able to go, for example, horse riding or sailing or gliding or things like that. Those three, for me, the education is made of those three equal parts. The book is to learn what is the world, in fact, how to think, to learn all the intellect, to transform you into an intellectual thinking person.
Would you teach history?
Yeah,
Hey, what's going on with our?
they're contradicting
You
us.
must be getting excited.
They contradict us. Yeah. You have to develop. In fact, you have to develop the way of thinking of people. That's it. So, and you must give them ideas of a lot of ideas.
Let's see if
On you have a little problem on everything, my dear. The other
I'm
languages.
going to turn this off for the folks at home. So, sorry, logo. Oh, there we go.
No. Yes. Don't touch.
So go on. I'm sorry.
No, I say that you must learn in general several things like history, way of thinking, or have a view of mathematics, have a view of other languages. All the intellectual, you must transform the intellectual, take advantage of the intellectual part and give enough to any student to use that intellectual part.
And who decides what the history is?
My dear.
I'm making them work today, folks.
No. Today I will tell you something. I can tell you something.
Because the old saying is that history belongs to the victor.
Listen, dear. I will tell you something. You know that I participate to the war. I was part of a British mission, and I was in charge of, in fact, visiting and providing 5 completely independent groups of fighters. And in my area was the Castle of Valençay. And the Castle of Valençay, and at the time they never told me exactly what was in. Nobody wanted to tell me what was in. Because like that, there was one thing: the less you know, the better you are. Because if the German, for one reason or another one, you are obliged, you never can tell, and you could eventually talk and say what you must say. So you must learn as less as possible. Don't ask questions. That was the rule. Don't ask questions. So I never asked questions, and I had 2 good friends who were the taking care, if you want. We were the guy in charge of the treasure of the Louvre. We were in the castle. We were in the basement of the castle, and they never told me exactly what it was. Never did. And I read very recently a book which is talking about all that. My dear, there is not one sentence, there is not one story right. I was in charge, military in charge of the castle. And if I read the book, I learn a lot of things that I never saw.
See, that just goes to show you. History is just somebody's perspective on things.
Yeah, but finally, for one.
Can history be true?
No, because you have several. Okay, on that circumstance, that's something special I'm talking about. But if you look, for example, at the history of America, you'll be obliged to come out to a few things, the Constitution, and all that, and that everybody will agree on that. And if a student must know that when America was constituted, it was with the Constitution, and there's some truth in history that cannot be camouflaged. The details, that's something else. Details of this or that.
Yeah, but America, it's only been a concept for, we're getting close to, 250 years. Before America, it was Turtle Island, and it was inhabited by what we today call Native Americans.
Yeah.
That's a history that gets totally lost.
Yeah, and as we say, we don't like strangers in our country. So we destroy all the inhabitants of America. So that's something else. But if you look at the history of America, for example, you are nevertheless obliged to say it has been constituted that day. The Constitution has been written. You have it, and this is the people who did it, and so on. So you cannot negate that. There are things that you cannot negate. You can negate a lot of episodes of this, of that. That's something else. Like my story about Valençay. That's an episode. But the reality is that it has been made by these men that day on the Constitution that you can read, and so on, so that you cannot change that.
So you would teach people history, mathematics, science?
Yeah, the basic, and some other language, to touch other languages, and eventually to be open to other countries, other way of living. People, you have to learn that you are not alone.
Because last episode we spoke about protecting people's cultures.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah, that we must not destroy we must cultivate the people way of living, the people way of singing, all the habits, all that. We must cultivate that, not to lose it. Otherwise we are going to lose it. General education doesn't mean that everybody must have the same education, not at all. It means that there are few things. If you learn algebra, whatever your language, algebra will be algebra in any language in the world. Now you're not obliged to learn the history of all the countries in the world. That's something else. The general history of humanity, plus the general history of humanity is very simple. Mm-hmm. Very, very simple. I taught them to some professors in here. For centuries and centuries, the people were living on themselves, more or less living on themselves.
Tribes.
Yeah. And then one thing came out, boats. And boats started to go. Yeah. Even Greece, Athens and all that, it was boat in the Mediterranean, etc. And finally, it was boats all over the world. The Cape of Good Hope was performed for the first time. It's in 1500 for the first time. So at that point, it's the world was in two parts. The active, very active part, the Occident, and the less active part, but more thinking part, the Orient. Completely different. And the Orient at that time has no big factories and all. And the Europeans installed factories and the conquest of the world. to conquer all the materials, to conquer everything. You know, in India, look at the English with India, please. To have all the materials that you need to have them all that. So, in other words, the Occident was very, very active. The Orient was not very active in that way, in the way of industry. So that's the big history, and we are still to that. The Orient is something else today because they have the modern way of course, they can be more modern than in that time. Even if you consider that mathematics has been involved by them, not by the Europeans.
Well, I'm sure people in the Far East would say they've been fighting battles amongst their tribes for ever and ever.
But not in the way the European did. There was nothing like the fight with England. You know, the big armada, the Spanish armada, and then after that is typical Occidental.
What about
fighting like that?
What about Genghis Khan?
Well, yeah, that's an invasion. Yes, yeah. But that's one invasion. Okay, that's it. But the same thing in Europe, if you want.
Europe always seemed to be
the Roman Empire and divide all Europe and the Mediterranean. That's the same thing. But that doesn't mean a way of thinking.
In your free education, would you teach spirituality?
No, you don't have to teach spirituality. No.
No?
No.
It's just...
Yeah, you have to say
each person's on their own?
But spirituality, most of the time is done, number one, because the kid in the family has such and such spirituality. You cannot fight spirituality, and you cannot tell spirituality is this. You can say it intellectually speaking what it is, but not give any specific about spirituality. You cannot say the Christians are right, or the Islamists are right, or those are right. That's not the problem of a government.
You're assuming that Christianity is going to still be around in the future. It might not be.
Yeah,
I think spirituality will always be around.
Of course.
But I think people's religions will die off.
Because man need eventually to think that there is another life after death. So you know that is in human nature to think of that. True or not true, that your spirituality will say it's true, it is not true. But nevertheless, most people believe that there is another life after that. Some people know. It's over. Finish. But you cannot...
spirituality is more than just the afterlife, right?
Yeah, no, okay.
It's
but you cannot...
how we treat each other and...
Oh, no, that's not spirituality. No,
that's not?
No, that's not spirituality. That should not be. Of course, you can involve spirituality in that. And your spirituality, your church, whatever it is, will say you must be nice with the neighbors. But that should come naturally. I should say from school, from whatever, you should be nice with everybody else. Not only your church to tell you that. Because if your church tell you that, and here they don't tell you that, that will conflict.
Well, the purpose of your education for all is, if I remember correctly from past episodes, that you said it's to teach people how to become good citizens.
Yeah. You cannot vote if you do not know for what you are voting. And I am sure that in this country, you have kids who know absolutely nothing about politics and will become politic with not knowing what they are talking about. You know, you have, what I reproach here is that you do not develop education. Education should be absolutely free for everyone. It doesn't mean that everyone will go there. Huh? You have those who will stay there, the people who are more smart than other people, but you must give everyone the possibility to learn and to be educated.
To reach their highest potential.
Exactly. And you must not stop, when you are obliged to borrow money to make your own education. But that is absolutely, for me, it's absolutely scandalous. that the government make it in such a way that the student, if you want to be a student, you have to borrow money to be a student. Come on.
That should be a human right to
To education, the country, a country should educate its future citizen. How can you ask your future citizen to vote intelligently if they don't know anything about what they are voting for? Come on.
but it's not considered brainwashing students.
No, it's not a question of brainwashing. It's a question to no. That is part of precisely education to know what is the world, to know theater, to know that is part of that. You must make as much as possible a complete individual of the student. Like that, he is able to think on what you propose, politically speaking.
That's not the role of the parents.
It's the role of the parents.
You're going to get into a lot of trouble here.
No. I don't get in a lot of trouble. The parents can help. But the parents are not going to educate their children in mathematics, in algebra, not at all. That's the church, that's the school. And the school, when doing that, the school give to the student enough possibility to think. And when they are confronted with a political problem, they can think. In fact, I always say, democracy, for example, it's a moral concept. It's not a basic, it's moral to be democratic. It's moral. So you have to have a school that will teach you how to think, mechanically speaking, how to think. Mm-hmm. And that your parents influence you, all right. Of course, it's the role of the parents to try to educate as best as possible their children. But the two things together will make a citizen. When he will have to vote, he will know what he is doing. Otherwise, many citizens don't know what they are doing. And many citizens, besides, do not vote, my dear. We vote. US is about 40% of the voters.
So should people vote in their best interest?
Of course. Of course, you vote for having the government that you want. But what kind of a government if you don't even know anything about government, if you know nothing? How can you vote intelligently? You cannot vote intelligently.
Well, you could vote with your stomach.
Oh, yeah,
right?
That's not enough.
Yeah.
That's the stomach. If the government promises you some dessert, you can vote with your stomach. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're rapidly running out of time here in this episode, and
you talk too much.
Yeah, it's surprisingly how fast the time went. It was a great episode, I think, and we want to hear people's comments, and they can certainly always write us at info@radiofreewill.org, and they can reach Michel at, what was your, let's give the email and the website once again.
The website is no-pennies. No-pennies, that whatever, com, I believe. That doesn't matter. And my personal address is Michel Mokers, one word, @gmail.
So, folks, I hope that you will enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you'll subscribe.
If they want to receive the magazine.
If they want to receive the magazine, if you just send Michel an email saying, I would like to get this, I'm sure you would send it out to them.
I send it.
And Michel,
Yeah.
thank you again for
No, on the
showing
contrary,
your...
I believe. No, it's very interesting because that's obliged to precise some thoughts, to be able to say what you want to say. It's difficult.
I'm sorry if I got you worked up there for a little bit.
Go ahead.
But that's my job, so that way we can get the better ratings. Thanks again, everybody, for listening to us, and we'll be back again with another episode next week, right?
Yeah.
Okay.